Sorry about that. I'm speaking tonight, and yes. See, that's why she's a brain. Sorry about that. Amy, can we get the Zoom where I can see them? Good. Well, in theory. Just a second here. Well, Shabbat Shalom. It's good to see everybody here and on the Zoom. You give me just a second. I'm sorry about that. Here we go. Okay. So, tonight's Torah portion is called Noach, and it's the second Torah portion, obviously. Immediately following Genesis, Bereshit in the beginning. And the Torah contains a whole lot of different stories, many different stories of different types. And this parsha, as well as last week's parsha in particular, they're kind of recording origin stories and creation stories, and they kind of serve as a prologue to what we'll be reading about next week. That's the calling of Abraham. And it actually serves as a prologue to the entirety of the Bible. It sets the stage, establishes God, establishes our state without him. And then from Abraham on, it kind of takes off into the whole narrative of us as a people coming into right position with him. This parsha starts with the story of Noah and the ark, which might be the most iconic story in all of the Bible, aside from the death of Yeshua on the cross. In fact, you might find more, if you went looking on Amazon or in the store, you might find more children's toys that are related to or in reference to this story, Noah and the ark, than any other Bible story, all others combined. You might find more toys for this, the ark and the little animals and stuff, and for good reason. That's a really good basis for like some fun stuff to play with. But the kind of the summary of this parsha, this Torah portion, Noah, it's of course the great flood, where society had become so corrupt that God tells Noah that he's going to destroy the world. So, however, he is going to preserve Noah and his family, and tells him therefore to build an ark, which is a box that would withstand the flood's destruction and God's as well as God's recreation of the world. Noah and his family were protected in the ark while the entire earth was cleansed and reborn. And they remained in the ark as the flood waters raged for 40 days and nights. After the water subsided, Noah received a sign of God's provision in the form of an olive branch, and was told by God that now's the time to leave the ark and rebuild. The story of the flood is even a parallel of the story of creation. For example, just a few examples here. Both events involve the waters above and the waters beneath, as well as a divine wind that blew over the waters. There was a sin in this story that involved nakedness, seeing nakedness and covering nakedness. There was a righteous son and a wicked older son. There was a great commission given, be fruitful and multiply, etc. There were signs put in the sky. In the case of creation, it's the luminaries, the sun and the moon. In this case, it's the rainbow. For a sign, it says specifically. And many, many other parallels. If you want to look it up, it's very interesting. So we can easily say that these stories are in many ways the same, the creation story and the flood story. But as we read these stories year after year, year upon year, the question that should be next to every line that we read, that question should be, what is the personal lesson, and what's the relevance to our lives? And the answer may be different each year. The word Torah means, of course, you can translate it in a couple different ways. It means instruction. It also means, you could say, it means direction, like to be directed. So it was written to serve to direct us, and to serve as our light on our paths. As such, it's kind of a blueprint in ways for our life. So what about the story of Noah? So how is that a blueprint for us? Well, I might say this year that the floodwaters are representative of all the challenges that each of us have in life, and particularly the physical challenges of this world, things that we have to deal with in order just to make it, to survive. And we're all surrounded by the raging floodwaters. This can be an unstable economy. It can be the danger of a pandemic, those type of real worries, those anxieties that we all have. They can overwhelm a person, especially with all the noise that politics and social media generates about it. We all know what kind of pressure it places on us, and they can destroy us without God's protection. So the ark is a picture of God's protection and preservation. When Moses wanted to make a place to keep the tablets that contain the word of God, he built an ark, a box. So God said to Noah, build an ark. God was preparing to perform a miracle in this case. So why would Noah have to build an ark? I mean, couldn't God transport Noah and his family along with the animals to safety even without the wooden box? Or maybe, just maybe, God wanted that act of faith, because that is one of the miraculous things he imbued us with, is that free will to choose him. So let's get back to how it applies to us. So when we are facing an overwhelming world, God says to have an ark, and in that ark to surround ourselves with the word of God. Just like Moshe put the word of God in the ark, that is our protection. That is what girds us. And if you want in any way to be able to transcend your circumstances, to protect yourself, your family, your children, your friends from the pressures and the destructive powers of life, you have to have an ark. You have to be able to take time every day, every week, to build that ark with prayer, and put in that ark the promises of miracles of God. In my ark, personally, one of the things in my ark is Psalm 71. You know, the whole thing's great, but here's just an excerpt. Be for me a sheltering rock where I can always come. You have determined to save me because you are my bedrock and stronghold. Now that is a strong promise of protection. And that's one of the things that I'll surround myself with when those circumstances come. But there's the challenge that many people who get into this art often, they like to stay there and don't want to come out of the ark. This is like the middle-aged guy who lives with his parents and plays video games in the basement all day. So that's that's kind of the equivalent. This is, you're simply surrounded by that nurturing environment, and you're not interested in engaging with the world and fulfilling your responsibility in the world. So Noah kept looking out of the ark to see if it was time to leave. And after 150 days, it was time. So God told Noah it was time to engage with the world again. God says, "No, I did not create the world for you to isolate yourself, as many religious people do, but to elevate the world." This is the essence of the story of the flood. It's extremely personal because we all face the world. Sometimes we have a tendency to want to just escape to some mountain or some oasis, and then we don't need or can't engage the world, because if we do, we get hurt by it as its floodwaters. We get hurt by it as if the flood waters, or we isolate ourselves and then we don't engage with the world. So the story is really telling us that we need both. There are times when we need either weekends on a Shabbat, or times when you need to have a weekly class or time for prayer. When you begin each day, you can begin the day traditionally with a little prayer that in a sense creates a buffer, like a protective layer. When we engage with the world, we can rise above it and not be completely consumed. And when Noah's sons came out of the ark, they were presented with that opportunity to rise above or to sink back into corruption. They had that choice. And Moses, well, he got drunk and laid exposed. His sons had a choice at that moment. They could either raise their hand to point a finger, or they could raise their hand to help and rectify the situation. And y'all know the story. And then there's another story in this parsha, the story of Babel. So it goes like this. They made bricks, and they apparently thought their building skills were so very advanced. So they decided to make a space elevator. And the lesson of the flood was still not learned. The people were so impressed with themselves and what they could do that they exalted themselves and what they could do. They tried to put themselves in the place of God. So what happened? Well, they became divided. God confused their language. And honestly, with such an arrogant society, it might have taken much less than that to divide them. The point is that we can go into our ark and look at ourselves two ways, either critically or admiringly. We can come out better and stronger from our ark, or we can come out arrogant. Or even we can come out better and stronger, or we can come out the same. Because if we're looking at ourselves admiringly, why would we change? So that will make the difference in how we affect the world. If you want to make the world a better place, Take a look at yourself and make a change. So don't lift yourself up, lift up those you interact with, even if they're wrong. Even if you disagree with them, you can still tell someone you respect them. That's a message that'll speak to us right now, in this time of, I'll say again, politics and social media. We're all divided against each other. Everyone is tired of that division, honestly. So you'd be surprised how far just one simple, little, bitty, uplifting word will go. Even when you say it at that point when, you wouldn't expect someone to say something, just say a little something. You'd be surprised. And that's about all I have. I'll leave you with this promise of God that God promises in this parsha. He says, "Never again will I curse the ground because of humans, even though every inclination of the human heart is evil from childhood. And never again will I destroy all living creatures, as I have done. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will never cease." Amen. Shabbat shalom.
Man.